So here we are for the final Trenton Public Schools Town Hall meeting, and we are Zooming tonight. We're doing our best. We're using the free version, so we have 40 minutes, and I'll move quickly. But our focus tonight's on the May 7th, 2024 proposals, really where we're looking at a replacement proposal, which is a sinking fund for a hold harmless, and a renewal, which is the non-homestead operating millage. So it's two proposals that will be on the ballot come May 7th, not one. So been a little bit of confusion about that, and that's really the theme today, is to look at some of the questions that people have had, but at the same time, before we get into that, let's take a look at some of the basic information regarding our proposals. At the heart of this is this theme of, or this idea of funding for the future. We know that a bond passed in 2018. We know that we've completed the work on that bond, but we've also learned that upkeep on those facilities and those upgrades will be essential to the future. And nothing could be more true than thinking of our elementary school age children and what their future holds. So looking at these four items up for bid, but they're not, the first thing I saw early on when we worked on these proposals was this idea that we're in debt and that we're in need of additional funding to pay off loans. That's not true. In fact, Trenton Public Schools are adequately funded with a fund balance of 17%. The second point I wanted to address, I've heard people say, well, the hold harmless should be enough. Why increase taxes? The hold harmless has been around for 30 years, and it has declined significantly in those 30 years, almost $400 per student. If you couple that loss with the decline, the smaller number of students we have, we're looking at a significantly less amount of money coming into our school district. Just learned this last week that there is a education proposal, a bill for consideration that's being put forth by the Senate in Michigan, where they're talking about doing away with the hold harmless entirely. So in a blink of an eye, you're looking at a $646,000 reduction to Trenton Public Schools. And remember, the hold harmless is unique. We're one of 21 districts in the state of Michigan that collect a hold harmless. However, we're unique because our community decided that 30 years ago. Third point, Trenton Public Schools don't need money, or do not need money, if they would just be fiscally responsible. To be clear, if you're affiliated with the schools in any way, you know that we have a very arduous and complex and long process of where we're audited each year by Yao & Yao. Yao & Yao is a nationally recognized accounting firm. In fact, one of my relatives works for them. It is the firm to be in, and we're audited by them each and every year. They go through our books with a fine-tooth comb. And then the last point, I've heard this, I would vote yes, but the schools aren't what they used to be. That's why there are less students. It's not true. Declining enrollment is a national trend. I have numbers off the top of my head. Wisconsin has 39,000 less kids today than they did 3 years ago. Massachusetts has lost 2,000 students. They're under 10,000 across their state. I mean, it really doesn't matter where you look. California, New York, doesn't matter where you look. It's a national trend, and Trenton has been no differently affected than anyone else. So let's dive just a little bit deeper. So looking at our general fund, it's easy for me to say that we're fine. These are real numbers. So when you look at the fund balance, the table on the right, you'll see that in 2007, that was our fund balance, just over $3 million. Fast forward to 2023, it's almost doubled. Now you say, oh, wow, look, you're doing so well. Why would you need anything else? Please note, please remember that it has been significantly helped through the grants from the state and from the federal government, commonly known as ESSER funds, that have helped us shift some of those expenses that go along with operating a school. Case in point would be our counselor at the elementary school. That is funded through a grant. So, and I can give you other examples, but that's just one simple example. And then, of course, the graph on the left shows you a general upward decline. So despite the challenges, Trenton Public Schools continues to be financially healthy. I snipped this actually from a focus panel presentation from the fall, but I think this really speaks well to what we're talking about with the hold harmless. When it was passed in 1994, okay, take a look at that, $542 per pupil in 94, at a time where we levied almost 6 mills on our community, and we had 3,227 students. I don't think anything could be more clear about the hold harmless than that. Fast forward 30 years, and you're looking at a hold harmless that now collects $257 per pupil, which is under 1.5 mils, 1.48 mils, and you're looking at 680 less students. If you add up those declines, those negatives, you're looking at $6.5 million less in operating revenue compared to 1994. And that's like comparing $94 to $2023. So key point. Another thing to look at, when we talk about a financial crisis, maybe this is impacting the way some people are seeing schools. This is all over the news right now. I've talked about how we're audited each year. But each of these districts that I just Google searched this on Sunday to make sure I could share some images with you. But Wayne Westland audit shows a $17 million budget mishap. Now that's a financial crisis. Taylor's in a very similar boat and with a very similar number. And Ann Arbor's has been all over. Ann Arbor Schools has been all over the news. So $25 million they're faced with in a budget cut. Those are financial crises. We're trying to avoid financial crises. So, and then here, this is what I was talking about with declining enrollment. And this is just a simple Google search. Literally 30 seconds, that's the first thing that popped up. Public school enrollment falling nationwide, data shows. So that's not something I make up. I've studied this very arduously for 4 years since the pandemic started in 2020, when we lost approximately 6% of our student enrollment that year alone. But you can see downriver, all the different communities, and how much they've lost in the last 6 to 7 years. That data is from 2015 to 16 up till March of 23 last year. But some of those you could see pretty significant. Taylor down 22%, Southgate down 22%, Wayne Westland down 19%. So you look across the board, and then there's Trenton at just under 6%. So we've held our own, and this has all been complicated by the fact that the lowest birth rate in Wayne County in the last 100 years was in 2022. And to put it in greater perspective, in just over 20 years, there were 500,000 school-aged children in Wayne County. Today, there's about 250,000, so almost half in a decline just in this county alone. So it's all over Michigan, the UP, the west side of the state. I believe it's Livingston County where Brighton's at. That was the only school district, I believe, in Livingston that increased students this year, and that was a whopping 34. And that was through school of choice. So just those are the things that sometimes people deduct, and I would argue that you're deducting in the wrong manner. It's across the board. It's affecting everybody. You can see Gibraltar plus 3.7%, and Woodhaven Brownstown about the same. So there are two exceptions to the rule, so to speak. Here is Trenton's enrollment. In our free time, what do? We go back and we research data from 1967 to the present. And you can see from 1972 until 1991, 20 years straight, Trenton Public Schools lost a significant number of students. Okay? And what's interesting, with that decline in enrollment, you could almost parallel that to the loss of business in Trenton as well. McLeod Steel, Monsanto, things of that nature. So there's a real strong correlation between the two. However, it slowed a little bit in the mid-90s. You can see that, real slight increases. And then it resumed. And then if you look at the top part, the top table, you can see the last 3 years. We've been very aggressive in marketing our school. I saw that was a question on Facebook. Why do we have ads and why do we have these videos? It's because we're trying to bring people in to our school district. Today, if you look at this number, 390 school of choice students, which brings in approximately $3.7 million per year. So we would be a school district of less than 2,200 without them. That's what the orange chart reveals there, or the orange highlights reveal on the chart. So, and the counter question to that would be, well, are you just going to keep bringing students in? No, we're not. The sweet spot for Trenton Public Schools is having grades of about 200. That's the goal. We had a kindergarten class for the first time in years come in at around 200. So chances are pretty good. Unfortunately, for those that want to bring their first graders here, we probably won't have school of choice available to them next year. So it's controlled, and we're limited. We're a limited school of choice district. So we're not open enrollment year-round like some school districts. So just some key points to note. I'll make this quick. I'm an old history teacher. I like to give you all the facts. 1994 was supposed to be a quick fix for schools. Get rid of property taxes as your main source of funding. Go to a sales tax and base your funding on enrollment. That was the plan. In fact, to be honest with you, that started out as a joke. I had a political science professor that brought that to our attention and used it in class. That was 1991-ish that was first being talked about, and by 1994 it became a reality. So there is a table that shows you exactly how school funding works. Sales tax makes up 46% of the barrel, and the barrel represents the school aid fund. So almost half of that barrel is filled with sales tax revenue. State income tax is 21%. Property taxes that we talk so much about is about 15%. I would argue it's probably a little bit higher now. The lottery, the end all that was supposed to save schools. Remember, 75 to 85 cents of every dollar of the lottery goes to the winner, goes to the processing fees, and the place that sold the ticket. So those billboards you see on 94 are not valid, are not a fair representation of how the lottery works. But the point is, all of those taxes go into that barrel, and we all have heard count day. You've heard of some districts and what they do as far as bringing kids in for that period of time, which we've never really done that. We just say, please get your kids to school. Basically, your count on those days, your number of students determines the amount of money that you're allocated from the state. They call that a per pupil foundation grant or allocation grant. So the more students you have, the more money that you get. So why are we here? Well, and again, I'm trying to move rather quickly, but the hold harmless is a declining revenue stream, and it's dependent on enrollment. Go back to what I said about 2022, the lowest birth rate in the last 100 years in Wayne County. Those kids will be school age in 25, 26, 26, 27. Do we really want to wait till that happens? When we have a high school that will be less than 800 by then? That would truly be a double whammy. We have a pocket of smaller class sizes that are at our upper end, our secondary end, and we are trying to plan for the future, and we really don't want to wait and see what happens. We would rather be proactive than reactive. So that's the first point. The second point is sinking fund is not dependent on enrollment. So it is a 10-year proposal, and it's a 2 mil stable set millage rate. And then the last point is the non-homestead, which is the one of the two proposals. This is the one that's kind of got lost in the weeds, so to speak, because people seem to not understand there's two proposals. The non-homestead is vital. It's $3.3 million in funding, and all across the state, school districts pass the non-homestead generally because it basically makes you whole when it comes to that barrel and that funding that I was talking about. So, and that's an 18 mil levy on businesses. So again, not on your primary residence. So there it is, the 2 mills over the next 10 years. I talked about a consistent source of revenue. What is a sinking fund? It's an interest-free method of funding upgrades and repairs to schools and school facilities. And you can see the different things it can be used for. We are looking at technology, we're looking at safety, and we're looking at investing in the performing arts. Those are the three areas we identified as ongoing and necessary investments, to be frank, and to make sure that we're cognizant of those things moving forward. Additionally, each mill in that proposal is worth $646,000. So for the same amount we would lose if the hold harmless dropped, we would not only replace that, but then we're saying an additional stable mill. So we're looking at about $1.3 million that would come from the sinking fund on an annual basis. So, and then it would allow us to use all of our money to support student instruction, programs, and operations. The challenge to understand, we have a calculator on our website, but there it is. This postcard has gone out. Remember, taxable value represents about half of what your market value would be. So if you have a taxable value of $150,000, your home, we're assuming, and not necessarily guaranteed, is worth about $300,000. But the point being, on a $300,000 home, you're looking at $6.40 more per month. Now, I'm not much of a Starbucks guy. That's why I go to Bigby. But the reality is that's about a cup of coffee from Starbucks per month. And from the and that's a couple cups from Bigby, by the way. So nonetheless, there's a plug for Bigby. I go every day. So with that, taking a look, you can see a $350,000 home. It's about $7.50. Multiply that by 12, you're looking at about $85, $90 a year. But what we really, I think, one of the things we missed was this. So I did this on Sunday and wanted to bring it to your attention. If you look at a lot of the homes in Trenton, our ranch-style homes, they're worth about $250,000. I think that's a fair number. The annual increase on your property tax would be $65 a year, which equates to $5.42 a month. So, I mean, that has been the big question, and we're trying really hard to make sure people understand it is a slight increase. We haven't hidden that. We've been upfront about that since November. So, in fact, the survey, one of the things, the feedback we got was we were originally proposed a graduated increased sinking fund, and the survey revealed that people didn't want that. They wanted a flat 2.0, so that's what we went with. Continuing the non-homestead, just to be real quick, I talked about how it generates $3.3 million per year. That's an estimation, or it's very close. Essentially, again, it's a part of what I think we're around $30 million in operating revenue per year. I might be off a little bit, but the bottom line is that's a significant number. So without that, we'd be one of the, maybe, if not the only, but one of the few districts in the state that would not have a non-homestead passed. So that's kind of a unique thought and not something I really would want to try to figure out. So considering that, it's not levied on primary residences. It's levied on businesses, second homes, vacant land, and rental property. And again, this would not result in any additional new taxes on anybody. It's a renewal. Now, someone asked me, can you guarantee that this would never go up? And the response I got from an accountant was, if they discovered gold or oil on your property, it's a good chance that would go up because the property itself, the point was the property itself would be worth more. So that was how they explained it to me, so that's how I'm explaining it to you. It is a significantly greater revenue source than either the hold harmless or the sinking fund. So with that, just real quick, some key points. We talked about these already. I definitely wanted to make sure that I was open for questions afterwards, but we talked about these things. Same thing with the sinking fund. I think the third bullet point is probably the most important. By leading and not following, Trenton Public Schools will solidify its standing as an institution of excellence. This benefits all stakeholders, homeowners in the city of Trenton, but most importantly, our future generations of Trojans. People say transparent. We have been working very, very diligently over the last 4 months to get the information out. We've had articles in the Trenton Times numerous times. The News Herald, we had several advertisements in the News Herald. We sent it out in all of our school communications. It's all over social media. We utilize a third-party K-12 media to help us run our Facebook and Instagram, as well as we've done mailings, postcards, internal communications, and we've posted all of this information on our school website. So there's a copy of the postcard. And just to be clear, I wanted to point out again, the non-homestead is unique because all school or community residents have the opportunity to vote on this matter, regardless of whether or not it directly impacts their own taxes. That's what makes the non-homestead unique. And I think that's what causes some of the confusion. Like, why do I get to vote on something that doesn't affect me? Arguably, it does affect you because if you pass it, then it fully funds the school, which then ultimately, as we know, we're all stakeholders of. So in the end, one last question that I've been asked, what do you do? Like, why are you coming to us about this? Why are you proposing a sinking fund? Last September, we sold $4.5 million worth of energy bonds at no cost to taxpayers in the city of Trenton. Okay, we were partnered with a company called Train Technologies. All that information is available. It's addressing big issues such as all of our plumbing in our high school. It's all energy related. School of choice. We were very proactive with school of choice starting right after the pandemic when we lost so many kids, 142 kids in 1 year. Again, today, so $4.5 million in energy bonds. $3.7 million is brought in annually with school of choice. The advertising agreements, I welcome all of you to look at that issue and how we've gone about working through that. But even, for an FYI, $175,000 agreement. We're the only school downriver and in Wayne County that I know of that has that kind of an agreement with a sponsor. $175 over $1,000 over 5 years. We signed some other smaller agreements with Precision Orthopedics in our gym. The idea is to keep that going. The idea is to utilize our facilities in a way that benefits our kids and our community. Facility rentals, we charge for outside groups to use our facility rentals. And you'll notice the drop box, I just snipped that today and put that on there because we are so cognizant of preserving our general fund. To be really frank, those clothing donation drop boxes in all of our loading dock areas bring in $250 per month that we use for meetings, foods and drink, things of that nature, so that we don't have to go into our general fund for that. It never seemed right. So I discovered that a long time. In my first month, I'm like, how do I have snacks and a couple of waters for people? And they're like, well, you got to do that. So didn't feel right. So we try to do everything that we can to make sure that we stretch our dollars and are fiscally responsible. And these proposals are for kids. It's not about the adult opinions. It's not about me. I've got 37 years in public ed. This is not about me. This is about what we need to do from a vital standpoint to fund our schools and deal with the things that we know that are coming up in the future. Challenges with that 100-year low 2 years ago. Challenges with keeping our facilities in top-notch condition. The fact that we have tennis courts that have $55,000 worth of cracks that need fixed. It all adds up, and so we want to be proactive. It doesn't mean we're going to find the yellow brick road when this is all said and done, but it will put us in a position to continue to serve our community in the best way possible. Whew. That's it. All right, so it's time for questions. I'd be happy to try to answer all of them. Should I go up now? I think that was the plan. I'll go up. Is this one on? Okay.
Yeah. If we saved $4.7 million on the energy bonds and the advertising monies too, what line items did this offset in the budget?
What line items did it offset? As per usual, it's interesting, right? Because when you look at, if you were to sit down and do an analysis of our budget, you'll see that our facilities and the costs that go with maintaining those have increased literally every year since we passed the bond. So ultimately, instead of spending more than what we budget for, it's offset those costs and expenses so that we don't have to put the pressure on our general fund that goes along with that. And I would add, a lot of people don't realize that 85 to 87% of our revenues that come from the state are used for personnel, so staffing, salaries, and insurance. So when you look at it from that standpoint, we're a people business, our money goes towards the people and the kids that we support. I hope that answers the question. And that's a great question, too, by the way, because the reality is school finance is not easy to understand. So when you throw out these numbers, you always put out the numbers with the idea that it might not be the best way to answer things, but we want to be factual.
Per se.
Okay.
But for the audience out there, if the non-homestead was not to pass, what would be the catastrophic results of that? What would be...
Okay.
Just so people have an idea of what that $3.3 million means to us.
Great question.
Their property value,
Yes.
their property taxes.
Correct.
It will affect their kids if we lose that.
And so if you couldn't hear Mr. Kinney, the question is, if the non-homestead wasn't passed, catastrophically speaking, how would that impact our community? Well, number one, I put those articles up of neighboring communities. Now, they had significantly more, right, to deal with, $25 million budget cuts, $17 million. However, when you look at the size of Trenton, proportionately speaking, I don't know if it's the same, but it would be catastrophic in the sense you would have to cut programs, potentially cut staff. The other issue that goes along with that is the fact that ESSER funding is going away as well. So with that, a lot of the grants that we've received over the last 3 years, we need to maintain or sustain with money from our general fund. So at a time when we would lean on it a little bit more, it would be under a much greater strain from the standpoint of sustainability. And then the last point to that, Mr. Kinney, is pretty simple. If you can't deal with those things, and those are not the essential vital things, you're looking at cutting curriculum, program, and potentially staff. So yeah, I think it's really threefold, and I think they're interconnected. I believe they're interconnected, and it's really not something that is fun to consider.
What are the increases in safety that we are looking to add with the sinking fund? What arts programming?
So safety and arts. So specifically, the difference being between the sinking fund and a bond proposal is that you have to have a legal scope of projects that you're going to do in a bond proposal. The sinking fund allows you to address those things in a more, what's the word I'm looking for, flexible way, flexible manner. The auditorium was not really touched in the last bond, and we've created a performing arts team to address those things that need fixing, so to speak. We have a needs assessment that we created last June. We have a team of parents. We have a team that's made up of parents, teachers, administrators, and the idea is to look at those different things that we can address. The chiller that needs replaced, we are going to take care of that end of the building with the energy bond. However, the challenge becomes is making sure that the auditorium is served in a way that when people are in there, they're comfortable. So there are costs added to that. As far as safety goes, sustainability-wise, so we fund our safety consultants through a grant. It's a 31 AA grant that the state is saying that they'll fund for one more year. Of all the positive feedback that's out there, I've heard there's considerable feedback in the fact that we have a safety specialist that works with GM, who works part-time, a retired police chief, Steve Voss, this other person was John Crowley, and Todd Tincher, who are really helping support our SRO, because again, sustainability is the key, and being able to employ them part-time. So it's things like that. It's looking at, today I was on the phone talking about a night lock system, which is extremely expensive. So we're always looking, and technology, as many know, is typically outdated within 5 years of its issuance. So, those three things in and by themselves are a great challenge to maintain and keep current for our kids and staff. Is there any other question? I would add, if we're still on air, so to speak, I've been around I've been in this district for 30 years, and one of my worst memories was when we were sitting in a round table talking about, this was 2008, when we were in a recession. Remember, sales tax makes up 46% of school aid funding. So we were in a recession. Enrollment had declined in Trenton. And we're sitting in a round table, and we're talking about what programs we want to cut. Now, key word there, want to cut. I don't ever want to cut programs for kids, so I excused myself from that conversation, and I don't want to have that conversation now as a school superintendent. Was that 14 years ago? Something to that effect. 16 years ago. So no, I don't want to lead that kind of conversation, because our kids deserve to be supported. Our staff deserve to be supported in the best way possible. And by the way, I'm not promoting a yes vote. I'm just sharing facts that these are real things that are essential to Trenton Public Schools. I'd like to say thanks to Mr. Morrow for helping us, the City of Trenton for allowing us to host this meeting today in their chambers. Thank you to Mayor Rizeppa. Thank you to Julie Drabchek, who is the most amazing assistant. Mr. Mark Ravez, who's helped. Did I already thank Mr. Morrow? Miss Debbie Devitt was outstanding in helping us get this off the ground. Thanks to our audience tonight. Thanks for those that tuned in. And looking forward to May 7th.